Alright, so weight and balance. We're going to be talking about weight and balance. So first of all, why is it important to talk about weight and balance when we're flying an airplane? Well, if the balance is a little off on an airplane, it can actually affect the performance by a lot. So in order to prevent that, we have to make sure the aircraft is actually balanced. So I'm going to start out with this. So let's say we have a seesaw right here. And let's say we have a small person right here. Yay. And then we have a large person right here. Oh, cool. So we got a big person. Which way will the seesaw drop? Obviously, it's going to go down this way, right? I got a big guy over here. It's going to drop this way. What can we do in order for the seesaw to actually be balanced with these two people still on the seesaw? Well, what we probably have to do is move this guy more closer to the center, right? That's exactly the same concept we use when we do weight and balance on an airplane. We got to move this guy this way. How far? This distance is called an arm. So we have an arm, and then we have how much he weighs, right? So we have weight. So if we do the weight and then we multiply that, we multiply weight and arm, we have what's called a moment. So weight times arm equals moment. All right, so weight times arm equals moment. Now that we got that concept, we're going to put this aside for the moment, and then we're going to see how CG affects our airplane, and then we're actually going to apply this and see how this relates to CG in an airplane. So let's say our CG is right here where this little dot is right there. So our CG is right there. So what that means is if I were to balance this airplane on a little point right there, it would essentially balance on that point. If I balance it right here, the CG is behind that point, and the airplane is going to fall this way. Vice versa, if I try to balance it this way, it's going to go that way. So the CG is literally the point where the aircraft actually pivots around, and that's where it actually turns. So that's why if we have our CG back here, the airplane is going to be a little tail heavy, and if you're trying to fly this way, it's going to be very, very, very unstable, right? And if your CG is too far forward, going to want to go down, and then what's going to happen is you're going to be pulling up on the yoke the entire time. So this is going to be having a lot of drag for the whole time. So it's going to be a little bit more stable, but however, it's going to cause a lot of drag because you got this yoke, you got the elevator pulled back there. You're going to be burning a lot of fuel. And also, when you're coming into landing, you can also damage the front wheel because most of the weight's going to be on that front wheel when you come down. Also, moving back here, the disadvantages of an aft CG is, let's say you're coming in and stalling. Well, what's going to happen when you do stall? You can't really push the yoke forward because guess what? The yoke is probably probably 80% forward already. So it's going to be very, very unstable. So to prevent this, to have your CG right in the middle. Now, according to the POH, I'm actually going to remove this little top here so you can actually see this a little bit better. According to the POH, there is a limit to how far this CG can be forward and how much it can be aft and still remain within limits for the aircraft. And you're going to be able to find that in Chapter 6 in your POH. Now let's look at a weight and balance sheet and see how we can fill one out. Alright, so when we look at a weight and balance sheet, we're going to be typically looking at something that looks like this. Now most of them look exactly the same. You're going to start out with basic empty weight. So basic empty weight is the aircraft weighing with all of its avionics, just the seats, no passengers, no fuel. It will have the unusable fuel in there, which we'll talk about in a minute, and it'll also have the oil. All of that will be 1,681 pounds, 0.8. So that is what you're going to put for your basic empty weight. Also, when you look at as we've seen in the POH's weight and balance, they give us the basic empty weight for that aircraft. They also give us the moment. Now notice Now remember, we said earlier that weight times arm equals moment. So weight times arm equals moment. Now this is where we got to do some little bit of algebra. We got to solve for x, right? So we have the weight, we have x, and then we have moments. So how do we solve for x? What we're going to do is we're going to divide the moment divided by 1681. That's going to give us our arm. All right, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to do 66,320. I'm going to do that right there, 66,320.54. And I'm going to divide that by 1681.8. And then my arm is going to be 39.43. And you can round it off, or you can just put 39.4. It's up to you, whatever you want to do. All right, now we're going to be getting into the pilot and passenger. So pilot and notice it says pilot and passenger. So let's say I weigh 150 pounds and then the passenger weighs 150 pounds. So in this, for weight, you're going to put 300. So I'm going to put 300. Okay, arm. How far is the arm from, what exactly are we measuring this from? So the arm is actually measured from the engine block, the firewall. So what is going to be measured from the, so if we take our POH, here is the firewall right there, and the arm right here is measured from this right here. So the pilot and passenger is 37 inches from the firewall, and that's going to be your arm right there. Now notice how weight times arm equals our moment, so we got to get our moment right here. Notice that it's 37, but in parentheses you have 34 to 46. Why do you think that is? Well, the seats actually slide up and slide back. That's why you have a little range right there. So that's why you have 37, 34, and 46 in parentheses. But for the sake of this, to make it easier, we're just going to use 37 for the arm. So 300 for the arm, we're going to put 37. In order to get the moment, we do the same thing again. We do 300, we multiply that by 37, and then we get a moment of 11,100. 11,100. Now, rear passenger. Rear passenger is also going to be right here. Now, let's say we don't have any rear passengers. However, let's say we do have our flight bags. Our flight bags are pretty heavy, but we don't normally put them in the baggage area. We normally just reach our hand behind and we just set them in the rear passenger. So even though it says rear passenger, what we're typically concerned about is making sure if there's any weight anywhere on this station, on this arm of 73, we definitely want to put it in there. So we're going to put our bags, let's say our bags weigh, I don't know, 10, 20 pounds, let's say 20 pounds. So for rear passenger, we're going to put 20, and then our arm is going to be 73. So we'll put 73 there, and then we go back to our multiplication. So we do 20 times 73, and that's going to equal 1460. 1460. Now, baggage area A. If you have any baggage area back here, then you can put it back there. Of course, you'd use the arm 95, and then baggage area 2 is 123, and so on and so forth. For simplicity, let's not have anything back there for now. So we don't even need to put anything in here. So we can just put 0, or you can just put a dash there, it doesn't matter. If you want, you can put the arms in there. So baggage area 1 is 95, and baggage area 2 is 123. Now notice there is a weight limit to these baggage areas. The one right here is going to be no more than 120 pounds, and baggage B no more than 50 pounds. All together, they cannot equal more than 120 pounds, and that's your limits there. Again, you can find that also in the POH. Moving on, next is our zero fuel weight. So what we do here is we actually add up all of these weights together to equal what the airplane weighs with zero fuel in there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to add them all up. So we'll do 1681.8 plus 300 for the pilot and passenger, plus our baggage in the back seat. That's going to equal a total of 2001.8. So we put that 2001.8, and then we do the same thing for the moment. So we'll do 66,320.54 plus 11,100 plus 1460, and that is going to give us a total moment of 78,880.54. Now, in order to get the arm, or CG, this is another form for CG as well. So the arm is kind of like the CG when we are doing the multiplication. So we're going to do 78,880.54 divide that by 2001.8, and the CG is the weight. The center of gravity of this so far is going to be 39.4 from this station arm. So it's going to be back here somewhere. So we're going to put 39.4, and it's 39.40, so I'll just put 39.4. Now we have fuel on here. So now we're going to add fuel, and we're going to say, let's say, we're going to load up the tank. We're going to just go full tanks. So we're going to do 53 gallons. Now, the total fuel capacity is 56. However, 3 of those gallons is unusable, and that is being counted in the basic empty weight. So we don't count those 3 gallons. Another common mistake is don't put the amount of fuel you're putting in here. Remember, this is weight imbalance, not quantity imbalance. So put the weight here instead. The weight for fuel is going to be 6 pounds per gallon. So if we have 53 gallons in there and we multiply that by 6, that's going to be 318 pounds. And that is what we're going to put here. So 318. Now the arm we get from the POH as well. Another way how you can tell of whether if you have to multiply or divide in order to get the arm or not, just think about it. Does the fuel actually move? Do we have wings that move? Like, for example, we have our airplane here. The fuel is always right here. The fuel will never slide back here. Our wings doesn't move that way, right? So no matter if the fuel is being drained or not, it's still in the same place. The seats are always going to be in the same place. So this arm is always going to be the same. The only thing that's going to be different is when the fuel drains and then once we do some extra, once we change these weights here, yes, this zero fuel weight, the CG is going to be changed, and that's why this is not given to us in the POH. But the things that are the things that we know that cannot move. So fuel, where is the CG? Again, or correction, the arm. Again, we look here in the POH, and it's going to be right up here. The unusable CG arm for integral tanks is located at station 48. So that's 48 inches back from the firewall. So we're going to put 48 right there. So we'll bust out the calculator again. We'll do 318. We multiply that by 48, and we get a moment of 15,264. Now, what do we have to do here? Now the ramp weight. Now we re-add these again. So 2001.8 plus the amount of fuel that we have here. So 2001.8 plus 318, that's our fuel, and that's going to be giving us a total ramp weight of 2,319 pounds, 0.8. That is how much our airplane is going to be weighing on the ground with our passengers in the plane, with our bags in the plane, fully loaded. That's what it's going to weigh. And then we do the same thing for a moment here. 78,880.54, and we do, oh, correction, we add, because we have to add the 15,264, and that's going to equal a total of 94,144.54. Okay, so now that we got this calculated here, we need to find out our CG of what the aircraft CG is before we even take off. And that's kind of important. So 94,144. Divide that by the weight. So we already have that in there. So we divide that by 2319.8, and that's going to equal 40.5. I'll just round it out to 55. So 40.55. So 40.55. Now, before we even go any further, let's see if our aircraft isn't within standards. Remember how I mentioned that the CG can go back a certain amount of limit and it can go forward a certain amount of limit. Where can we find that information out? Well, if we go into the POH, you're going to find this graph that looks like this one right here. Now, what we do with this, down here we have all of the arms, or the CG, and over here we have our weights. So we find our weight, we find our CG, and then we meet the two together, and it has to be within this range right here. Going back to here, let's get our numbers. So we have 2319. So let's find 2319 on here. So 2319 is 24, so I'm just going to use 23 right here just so I can follow this line, just to make it simpler. And then our CG, our arm, is going to be 40.55. So 40.55, so let's pretty much, it's literally right there. And I'm going to go all the way up, which is right there, and I'm going to follow this all the way over, and it's pretty much right there. And I am within the range according to the manufacturer's recommendations. So, great. Now I can continue. The next it asks about the start, taxi, and then run up. So where do we find this information? We're going to have to go to the aircraft performance part in the POH, which is chapter 5 or section 5. So we're going to go here to section 5, and here's where we go right here. So we have our time, fuel, and distance to climb at 2550. This is the max weight, and they do this for error on the side of caution. So if you look down here in the fine print, you're going to see notes number 1, add 1.4 gallons of fuel for engine start, taxi, and takeoff allowance. Notice engine start and taxi 1.4. So what we're going to do is we're going to do 1.4. Remember, it's not quantity, it's weight, right? So times that by 6, and then you got 8.4. So, but notice it says start, taxi, and run up. We also do a run up, right? So why don't we make this even more accurate by adding, let's say, 0.5 gallons. So it's going to be 8.4 pounds, 8.4, right? However, let's do the 1.4 from the POH's recommendations, from the manufacturer's recommendations. But since it doesn't include the run-up, I'm going to add plus 0.5 for our engine run-up. And that's going to equal 1.9, and I'm going to multiply that by 6, and that's going to give me 11.4 pounds. And that is the number that I'm going to use for my start and taxi pounds, just to make things a little bit more accurate. So, and also, notice that this is fuel that I'm burning now. I'm not adding. I've already added it up here. So now that I'm taking away, this is actually going to be a negative number. So minus 11.4. And we do the same thing over here. However, in order to get our moment, we need our arm. Remember, the fuel does not move. So this is always going to be 48. Fuel is always going to be on the 48 arm. So 48, and I'll do the same thing again. So I'll do 11.4 11.4, multiply that by the arm of 48, and that's going to give me a moment of negative 547.2. So minus 547.2, because a negative 11.4, any negative number multiplied by a positive number, you're going to have a negative number as a result. So now we have a takeoff weight. So when we take off, are we going to be within CG limits? All we're doing now is we're just rinsing and repeating. So 2319, we weigh as we weighed when we first started up the aircraft. So 2319.8. After our run up and everything like that, we lost 11 pounds. So we subtract 11.4 pounds, and now we weigh 2308.4. And then we do the same thing over here. So 144.54, and then we subtract the 547.2, and that's going to give us a new moment of 93,597.34. Divide that by the weight in order to get our, because we have to solve for x, so divide that by 2308.4, and that is going to give us our new CG of 40.5. Oh, it's almost pretty much rounded the same, 40.54.6 or 55. If I round it off, it'll still be 55. So as you can see, the CG didn't really change that much because we've only lost 11 pounds. But you can kind of see where it's going here. Now, if we actually go down here, so if we go down to the takeoff, the fuel burn, let's say we fly for, I don't know, 4 hours. So we will go to our cruise performance, and we will get into this a lot more when we go into our cross-country planning, and we'll go over what every single one of these numbers mean. But for now, for simplicity, let's say we want to cruise at 4,000 feet. So here's 4,000 feet right here, and this is our cruise performance and our POH. We're going to go over, and we're going to assume that it is within standard temperature. We're not flying, it's not going to be 20 degrees above standard temperature at 4,000 feet, and it's not going to be 20 degrees below standard temperature at 4,000 feet. So let's just assume this center column right here. And then right here, the GPH is gallons per hour. So we're going to come down here, and there it is, 10.4 gallons per hour. So let's say we wanted to fly for 4 hours. So we do 10 times 4, multiply that by 4, and there's your total 41.6 gallons that we're going to be using. Now, what we're going to be doing, remember, weight, not quantity, so we times that by 6, and then we get our fuel burn of, so we're taking out 249.6 pounds. And we take that number, and then we subtract that from our total weight, so 2308.4. We subtract 249.6, and that's going to give us a landing weight of 2058.8. Now we have to find our moment. Now, of course, this fuel burn is being taken away from the same arm, so we do 48, and we do, and let's do this, a negative 249.6. Multiply that by 48, and that's going to give us a negative moment of negative 11,980.8. You take that number and you subtract it from our moment that we had when we took off. So 93,597.34 subtract 11,980.8, and that's going to give us 81,616.54. And then rinse and repeat again to get our CG. When we land, we take that, we divide it by 2058.8, and we get a CG of 39.64. Now let's see if we are within limits. We go back to our chart here in section 6. Go here, and we do the same thing again. We'll go up to our weight, so 2,058. So we go 2,058, so right around there, almost the same, almost level with the utility word right there. So I'm going to use that to actually go over. And then our arm, our CG, is going to be 39.64. So we find 39.64 is right around here, and we're going to go all the way up until it matches our weight, and we're going to be landing around in the utility category. So that's how we know if we're going to be within weight and balance limitations from 0 weight, ramp weight, takeoff, while we're flying through the air, and when we land. And you can actually write down the takeoff CG and the landing CG all from here. And that is how you do your weight and balance. Oh, that was too much! Or was it? Of course, at first, it is a lot. I know that was kind of long and drawn out, but I definitely wanted to go over every single thing and every single calculation that you will be doing, possibly for every single flight that you do when you do go into your flight training in your flight institution. Some institutions actually require you to fill out a weight and balance form every single time you fly. Again, start practicing now, because the more you do it, the better you'll get at it, and actually the quicker you'll be able to do it as well. Alright, and one last thing before I go, and before you jump in the airplane and going, I want you to be aware of something, and that's nausea. You may feel a little sick when you first start flying the first few couple hours, and I'll tell you why. Back in the day when we were, living in caves and just eating grapes and berries, we didn't know what was poisonous, what was not poisonous, what was edible, what wasn't edible, but our brains was able to tell if it was poisonous, and if it was, and if it could sense that, it would take whatever is in our stomach and it would literally puke it out, right? It would eject it. I don't know if that's a better word to say, but that's what would happen. Anytime your brain feels that something is a little off in any moment, it's going to feel like it's poison, and it's going to try to eject whatever that could possibly be inside of you, even though your stomach may be empty. So when you are flying, and you're flying in a plane, and let's say you're looking inside, well, inside the airplane, it's perfectly, let's say, I don't know, here's my cockpit. I'm looking at my cockpit, and I'm straight and level. I'm looking right at you, and now I'm looking at the cockpit. Everything is straight and level. Everything's still straight and level. Oh yeah, it's still straight and level. I'm still upright. But wait a minute, my body is feeling like it's going that way. Something's not making any sense. Now my brain is gonna feel like I am being poisoned. So what it's gonna want to do is it's gonna want to eject what could be something's wrong here, right? That's why you start getting a little nausea or whatever. And that happens all the time when you first start flying. Humans aren't meant to fly, so we don't really have that thing inside of our bodies to let our brains know, no, we're not being poisoned, we're just flying in the air. We don't really have that. So in order to prevent that, instead of keeping your eyes inside, even though you may be looking straight, make your brain make sense of what your body is feeling by looking outside. If you look out, if you're feeling like you're being tilted to the left or to the right, and you look at the horizon, and your brain can actually make sense, oh, I'm feeling like I'm tilting to the left because I am actually going to the left because I can see the horizon. If you ever watch videos on aerobatic training, on a clear day, the pilot may go all the way up, and then they don't stay looking straight ahead because all they see is blue. Their brain is not going to be making sense of what's going on. Why am I feeling all the weight in my back, but it looks like my eyes are seeing nothing but blue? What they do is they look out on the side and they look at the horizon to make sense My body is feeling like this because I can see the horizon. The more you have your eyes outside the airplane, the less likely it is for you to be feeling, kind of nauseated or whatnot. If that ever does happen, and you are looking outside, just concentrate something very far out in the horizon. You can crack open the window a little bit on the Cessna 172s. They can actually open up in the air, so you can actually do that. They have vents in there too. You can have some air on you as well. If that does happen, of course, just let your flight instructor know, and they'll go ahead and land as soon as possible. It will go away over time. I myself even felt a little bit nauseated when I first flew, and I think I kept feeling nauseated for the first maybe 8 hours or so when I was flying. Nobody ever told me to keep my eyes looking outside. So I'm telling you now, so be prepared for it. If that does happen, you know exactly what, and you can expect it too. So if it does happen, you can expect it and you'll know what to do. I'll see you in the next video, and we're gonna be talking about traffic patterns and what we do when we get in the air. I'll see you there.